Happy Thursday, everybody. My name is Dana Neeson with Final Expense Telesales. I have a groundbreaking sales call review for you to listen to today. One of my top producers over the last couple of weeks has been getting a lot of the same objection at the end of her calls, which is, I magically can't find my banking information. That is a really hard one to identify between whether it's a true objection or a false objection. So I decided to listen to one of her calls. I invited her to a coaching call with me today. I asked her permission to record it so I could also bring it with you. If you do not listen to this entire call from start to finish, and you want to be serious about your career selling final expense insurance, you are doing yourself a disservice. All that and more today on Final Expense Telesales. If you are just now finding this channel, welcome. Again, my name is Dana. I run a telesales team for Tailored Legacy. We sell final expense insurance over the phone with one carrier. My job is to help you have stronger, more sophisticated sales conversations. I hope you enjoy this one-on-one coaching call. It is a true representation of how I teach my agents how to sell, and I hope you get tremendous value from it too. If you find value in this video, please give it a like. Post a comment, tell me what you learned, and share it with someone else who you think might find value. I hope you enjoy. Let's get right to it. So, this morning during our sales training, I asked the team whose call they wanted to hear. And I said I specifically wanted to pick a call that ended in a callback. And okay. I read like a list of 5 names, and a few people were like, Nicole, we want to hear Nicole's. Dang it. So I'm actually really grateful that they picked you, because I know that for the past couple of weeks, you've been struggling with getting the same objection you just got in this call, which we ended up uncovering at the end when we fast forward to it. And I just want to preface this by saying that even the best agents, right? Even the greatest agents can make small little changes and adjustments without even realizing what's happening. And then before you know it, you have gotten away from so much of what I call the sales process that you don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. You don't even realize what's happening. And so I'm really, really hoping that when you listen to this call today and we go through it together, because I have 2 pages of notes from when I listened to it earlier, that you're going to get a lot of aha moments from this. And I'm really hoping that it will help you refocus and get you back on track for your future calls, because I truly believe that the objection that you got was because the woman was actually not sold.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because this is exactly the thing I've been running into.
And so I just, you'll see, we'll give you, we'll listen to it. And then I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions about it to see kind of your thoughts on it. And then I'll fill in some of the blanks.
Okay.
Here we go.
Hello?
Andrea?
Yes.
Hi, this is Nicole with Tailored Legacy. I noticed that you might be looking for some information on protecting your family when you pass. Is that information you still needed, or I could help you with? Yeah, what kind of caused you to start looking at some insurance?
I'm getting ready to turn 55. I have had policies in the past, but you know, when you're young, you let stuff slip, and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
time to be responsible. I'm getting to that age.
Okay, yeah. So had policies in the past. You don't have any policies anymore, though, correct? That's what you're looking for. Okay. And then are you looking at this just for yourself, or was it for anybody else as well?
Just you. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll concentrate just on you. Okay, so I am going to ask a couple questions to get a better understanding of exactly what you're looking for, and then just make sure I could help. Would that be okay? Okay.
Yes. I have an appointment, but it's an hour away. So
It's an hour. Okay. Okay, so we'll kind of get this. I'll kind of just let you know what's going on and then go from there. Okay, so no policy right now. Have you been looking for a while to put something in place, or did you just start?
I've been looking for like 3 months, but I didn't want to buy that $9.99 stuff because
Exactly.
I know it's more than that in the end of the
Sure.
month. Or you won't have
Exactly.
any insurance for real.
Right, exactly. Okay, and then so you've been looking, but you just haven't found one that really fit. So, and then you've had insurance before. So the expenses that you're really most concerned about your family having to pay for when you do pass, what?
Okay, before we listen to that part, we're going to start with the first 2 minutes of the call. Okay, where I'm going to ask you things. What do we know? And what do we not know? Okay, so what do we know based on what she just told you?
Okay, so she is looking. She doesn't have any policies right now. She's been looking for 3 months. And again, she's probably seeing ads like Colonial Penn and things like that. What else?
That is what we know. Okay, so now what do we not know? Because you went right to what expenses. So what do we not know that you think might be important to understand about where she's been before we move on?
Okay, so definitely, I feel like I interrupt a lot.
It's okay.
But that's besides the point, because just me, I need to let her just talk and just be quiet. But with that said, yeah, how long has she been looking? And
She actually answered that question. She already told you. You
the
asked
3
that
months.
question. 3
That's
months.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
So I know she said she had life insurance in the past.
Mhm.
So no, I don't know. So obviously I'm doing something.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's why I'm asking you.
Okay,
All right,
yeah.
so here's what we don't know. Okay, well, we know she's been looking for 3 months, and all she said was, I don't want that $9.95 thing, and that she had life insurance before. Okay, so here are some of the things I'd like to understand. I'd like to know how much coverage she had in the past.
Okay.
I'd like to know if she's looking for that much coverage again, or if that's changed for her.
Okay.
I'd like to know how long she's been without insurance.
Okay.
I'd like to know, why does she feel like now's the right time to put something back into place, depending on how long she hasn't had it for.
Okay.
I'd also like to know, so you've been looking for 3 months. That's a long time to look, by the way. That's a red flag.
Okay.
She's been looking for 3 months. The only thing she said is, I don't want that $9.95 thing. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you've been looking for 3 months. I got you loud and clear. You don't want the $9.95 thing. We're good there. But what else have you found?
Okay.
Because she's had conversations. Okay. I need to know the other conversations she's had, how much coverage people have been offering her. I need her to tell me she hasn't moved forward with those because it's too expensive. And what does too expensive mean to you? So I need to understand where she's been prior to getting on the phone with me, so I don't make the same mistake as the other people she's already spoken with.
Okay.
Right? So, because what if, now you know what's going to happen, but people watching this don't know what's going to happen. So I don't want you to give anything away. But what if she would have said, people are offering me, only $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 for $100 a month. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, she's
Wouldn't you
obviously,
like to know that though?
absolutely. Yeah,
Right?
those are all questions. Yeah, I'm not asking enough questions, which every
Like
time.
the whole, what I call patient intake, right? Is you've kind of got away from some of that to understand the reason why people have not made a buying decision for the last 3 months. That's really important, because what we're doing in discovery is not just figuring out what they want, but we also have to mine for objections.
Okay. Yep. exactly.
We have to mine for objections to figure out what are the possible roadblocks that we're going to be coming up against, as well as how are we going to tailor our education to what their history has been to make sure they understand why they're getting the quotes that they're getting, why they keep getting
Okay.
stuff. Because we're about to hear some more information that's critical to how the rest of this conversation goes.
Right.
Okay.
And it's true because she had policies or insurance in the past. I have no clue if they were term.
You don't
So
know anything about it,
exactly. So
know
that is
nothing.
a definitely and the first.
right? We don't know why it canceled.
Exactly.
We don't know how
Yeah.
much coverage it was. You know,
Yeah.
we don't know how long she's been without coverage. We don't know why
Exactly.
it's important for her to have it now. Like,
Right.
we're also building, like, if you think of a song and like the peak of the song is that emotional urgency to move forward, we're starting to create that sense of urgency by understanding the problems of the past.
Exactly. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
You skipped a lot of stuff there.
Yep.
As far as understand, you heard 999 and ran with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Like, right, which was a mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
What are those exactly? What are you wanting the policy to cover? Is it just burial?
I just want to be cremated.
Okay. So cremation and not burial. The cremation, were you wanting to do like a viewing, a service, and then cremation, or are you wanting it just to be just simple, no viewing necessarily, and just like a celebration of life?
I think my kids need to look at me one more time.
Okay.
So I will want the service.
Okay, so just a viewing and a nice service. Okay, and then so really you just want to concentrate on putting a policy in place that takes care of the cremation. Was there any other concerns as far as?
I have a 16-year-old. She has to go to college if anything happens. So I want her to be able to finish college. She's trying to be a lawyer. So.
Oh, good for her. Good.
I already have one, so she's following her brother.
Aw, good job. That's awesome. So, okay, so pay for some education. So leaving a little bit behind as well. Okay.
Yeah.
And then who would be the one really taking care of arrangements when you do pass?
Ryan Alexander.
And then that's your son?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know that's probably what you're doing this for, is just making sure, again, they have money set aside for this in particular, and just make sure they're not coming out of pockets, and you're, like you said, just get organized again, get something in place with a plan. Okay, so that's what I'll look into. I'll look into putting a policy in place that takes care of that stuff. And then again, make sure that we have a plan set up for your son.
I have a phone call.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
6 grandkids. I would like them to have like $2,000 or something. You know, just to
okay.
remember me.
Yeah. Okay. So 6 grandkids, and then maybe about 2,000 each for them. Okay. We do have little child writers. That is something that, but I guess it's not necessarily leaving them behind. But I'll kind of go into that if you want. But okay, so maybe leaving some behind for the grandkids. Thank you. Okay, so I'll go over what we do so that you could understand it.
Okay, so that's the end of discovery. So I'm not going to give you any feedback yet. I'm going to let you give me the feedback because you already know the future. So based on what you just heard, before we move into education, first of all, there are some critical questions. Turn this on. Critical questions that you could have asked to learn more so that you can make better recommendations or help her understand her situation a little bit better. What do you feel some of those clarifying questions could have been?
So I think, again, re-listening to it, I tend to just, again, it only makes, you will say this all the time, it only makes sense when they say it. So I'm like putting things in her mouth for sure. So, and then just not letting her, even just the example of, okay, so she wanted cremation. Yes, we got down to education, but I just kind of took those 2 things and didn't let her speak. So really just letting her explain exactly what she's needed, what she wants. for that. And again, if I would have known what she had in the past, it would have shown me maybe she did have like a term policy that was a lot larger than what I offered her. So that's why I was kind of thinking maybe. Questions. I know I said, I know I have an issue with, not having that pain point be strong enough, like just connecting it to her, but I don't know as far as questions. I know I need to like re-list, so I guess I just need, I don't
That's
know.
okay. Just re-listening to it is helpful. So that, because now you have time, right? Now you have time to like sit back and absorb the information and think about how you could have done it differently, or maybe what you missed or what you could have asked, because you don't have the pressure of the customer on the phone, right?
Right.
Waiting for you right there to keep that conversation moving. Okay, so here's what we know. We know she wants to take care of a cremation with a viewing and a service. We know that she has a 16-year-old daughter she wants to get into college, and that she has 6 grandkids that she would like to leave $2,000 apiece to. This means we have a customer that is not just looking for coverage to take care of funeral expenses.
Right.
One of the big themes that I always talk about in training is let's not put these customers in a final expense box. Just because that's what we offer doesn't mean we can't help our clients understand what else is out there to help cover all of their needs, what's important to them. So because there's all these extra things happening here, but we're missing a lot. We're missing a lot of history stuff, how much coverage she had before, how much she's gotten quotes for, why she hasn't bought, what she thinks is too expensive, not enough coverage, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to ask her a really important question here, which would be, okay, so recap this. How much coverage would you hope to get? How much coverage are you hoping to be able to get if you could?
Okay.
Right? Because what if she would have said, I'd love to be able to get 50,000?
Right.
The way that you educate someone like that might have been a little bit different. You may not be just focused on $995. You're going to be focused on helping her understand the reality of her situation and making sure she knows that how we should maybe separate that need a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So how much coverage are you hoping to be able to get if you could? That helps you understand where she's at. Okay, that's the first thing, more clarity. Number 2, when you asked about who's going to be in charge of everything, and she said her son, right? And I think this is what you had picked up on, is that you projected your feelings about not wanting her son to have to pay for everything onto her, as opposed to letting her tell you.
Exactly.
Right? Which is actually the least important thing of all of this.
Yeah.
Right? It's critical history pieces that we're missing right now. Like the emotional stuff is good, but like without having clarity on what they need and what they want and what they hope to get, we're never going to be on the same page.
Okay.
Right? So, but still, not to lose sight of that. Okay, so it sounds like your kids are on the younger side. If something were to happen to you, I imagine you wouldn't want your 16-year-old, to have to figure out what to do next. Tell me what's going on with your son that would make you feel like he wouldn't be able to help support her, right? Like, that's like a really non-invasive way of her just being able to say, he's just getting his life started. I couldn't imagine him having to take care of his little sister and blah, blah, blah. Like you cannot project what your interpretation is of how they feel about something.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? But that's even like less of an issue compared to some of this other stuff.
Right.
Okay. And finally, you missed the most important question at the end. What did you miss?
So have you thought about what you would decide if you had put nothing in place at all? So what would you do then?
Right. And now there's a really great way we can ask this question based on everything we know. So you've been looking for 3 months, haven't found anything yet because things seem a little bit too expensive. I'm just making things up at that point. Just curious, have you thought about what would happen if you weren't able to find something that felt affordable, that gave you the amount of coverage you needed? Like, have you thought about a plan B? Or have you thought about what would happen if you didn't do anything at all? right? And why are we asking that question?
Well, honestly, we're asking it because she hasn't done anything in the past. So she doesn't have urgency to start this policy. And that is what I'm missing, is the urgency. So yes, aha.
So we missed that, but also like there's a two-part reason we asked the consequence question. A, we want to start creating urgency for fear of future pain.
Mm-hmm.
But we also need to know if there's a backup plan that will come up later as an option.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, I'm just going to do this.
Exactly.
We have to uncover that here.
Yeah.
And if we just focus on surface level needs and we don't go deep and we just stay wide, you are opening yourself up to so many unknown and unstated objections because people like you, right? And so, and then it becomes awkward at the end to give unstated objections out. So they just disappear.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So do you have any questions about
this
discovery?
was great. No, it's
because we're going to move into education now.
No, this is good. This is exactly what I needed to hear, because it's making, again, like you said, you just kind of do this all the time. And I think you just start leaving little things out that are so important. And this is exactly what I need to hear. So, okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
No,
And it's
I love
not
it.
little things though, right? These are
No,
big.
it's not. Exactly. Yeah.
And I want you to always try to remind yourself when you're on calls that you sell more than just final expense, and just pretend. Because if you did, and you heard, I want to make sure I need to have enough money to send my 16-year-old to college and leave money for my grandkids and pay for my funeral and this and that, you probably would have asked that question. How much money do you think you need to send your daughter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're going to be recommending a coverage amount that fits what they need, but you totally ignored it.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't get brought up again. Spoil alert. It didn't get brought up again until she brought it up again and reminded you about it at the very, very end. Right? Which is not where we want to bring it up. This has to be addressed where?
Yeah. Next. Yeah.
It has to be addressed and it has to be squashed.
Exactly.
Right? Because you do not rely on the FCGS to sell the policy. You have to sell the policy first. FCGS second.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So now let's listen to your education.
And just determine if it's a good fit. Edge Life Insurance Company. We have been around you. Is that something that you do have?
You can age out.
Your family when they need it. So I do keep budget in mind. And the first thing I always like to let my families know is that Lincoln Heritage, we provide whole life protection as opposed to term. Now, has anybody ever really broke that down for you before? The difference between those?
You can age out of it, and with the whole life, you get it however old you are.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep, that's basically it. Really, the only reason I bring up term, and I think you kind of mentioned it, that $9.95 for X amount of, that's units. But a lot of the advertisements we see or anything online is typically a term policy as well. And you're right. They last for 10, 15, 20 years, and then they end up canceling. When people tell me that they do want to put something in place, like to take care of final expenses and leave some behind, that's too temporary just because you don't know if it's going to be there or not. So I always say term policies aren't bad. They're just a just in case policy. You really do want to put something in place that's whole life to make sure it's there for your family when they need it. Because term policies
My son
end
just
at
had a conversation like 2 days ago.
Oh,
I was like, don't
that's
get
fun.
term because you can like outlive it and you be done paid all that money for nothing.
You can.
Get the other
That's-
one. I didn't know what it was called.
Yeah, and that's whole life. I see a lot of families, what they do is they do past the age, and then they're here like when they're 80, and they're wanting a term or a whole life policy, and then it's again, it is what it is. But the only reason I bring it up is because I usually say it's just a red flag when you see advertisements. So Yeah, so what we will be talking about is the whole life.
Okay, so that was term. We're not, so let's talk about that section before we move on to whole life. Okay, so based on what we just talked about, what you know, how could you have educated her about term differently?
So term, I don't know.
Okay, that's
To be
okay.
honest.
You may just
Yeah.
need to script out again and remind
Yeah.
yourself, because there's 3 different options on how we explain term, right?
Yeah, as far as, yeah.
One of them is managing expectations.
Mhm.
So we start with, do you know the difference between the two? She said she did. Perfect. You're like 99% of the way there. Term insurance, right, is temporary protection. It provides a large amount of coverage for a small monthly payment, but it only lasts so many years and then it cancels. She might have interjected there. My son and I just talked about it. You want to get the whole life. Perfect. Now, the reason we need to sit here for a second, I'm saying really nothing about the $995 at the moment, because that's not really what's super important to her. You mentioned earlier that you were hoping to get 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 100,000. I don't know. Let's just call it 50,000.
Yeah.
That you were hoping to get 50,000 in order to not just pay for your cremation, but you also would like to have money there for your 16-year-old for college, as well as leave an extra $12,000 to your grandkids, which is super admirable. Now, you also know from the past that she's gotten quotes for X amount of coverage that she thought was too expensive, right?
Yeah.
Now you have all this stuff to tie in.
Right. Okay.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to do a little pretending here that I have some of this information. Now, the only affordable type of life insurance coverage, the only affordable type of life insurance for that much coverage, based on what you told me was too expensive, is term. Right? That's why you're getting all these quotes for 10,000, 20,000, and you think it's too high. Just making it up, right?
Right.
Now, there is nothing wrong with getting a term policy, Andrea, because your daughter's not going to be in college for the next 30 years, right? So if you were to take, how much do you think you need just for the college and the expenses and all of that? Let's just say it's 30,000. Probably won't even be that much. But let's pretend you take 30,000 of it and you put it into a term policy that's super cheap, super affordable, and it lasts for 10 years, 15 years, maybe longer, we don't know. And then you do happen to outlive it. Yes, you lose the money, but if something does happen to you during that time, then your daughter has the money to pay for college. Does that make sense? Do you like the idea of that? Right? Because it might be, what you'll find is it's going to be too expensive to put all of it into a whole life policy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, it's really good. Mm-hmm.
Second of all, we probably will be able to fit in the 6 grandkids, right, into a whole life policy. But before we move on, because whole life insurance, right, and I'm asking her these questions, she has to agree with me that it's a good idea, that if she wants to cover if she wants insurance to cover education, that it's only really going to make sense to put it in a large term policy that's cheap and affordable.
Got it.
She has to agree with that, and she has to tell me why.
Okay.
Okay. One thing that you stopped doing is you stopped checking in. So you're giving a lot of information, and then you're just going right into whole life without even saying, does that make, I don't hear you say, does that make sense anymore? Does that make sense? Do you see how a term insurance policy might not be what you're looking for, except here you're staying generic and you're only focused on the burial, right? Instead of looking at the bigger picture of everything that she needs.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now we have a really clear picture. I literally just removed 30,000 from what she was going to get a quote for from me. So now I'm probably not going to get that's not enough coverage objection, or in her mind, that's not enough coverage objection where she just goes to the graveyard.
Yeah.
I mean, not figuratively speaking. Not for real. Okay, so then when we move to whole life. So whole life, which is what you and your son were talking about, that is the permanent insurance. That's the kind that never goes up in price. It never cancels at any age. But it's also why you're finding the quotes that you're getting you think are too expensive because they never cancel. The ones that are super cheap cancel, which is why they're really cheap.
Exactly.
So the policy amounts that we're going to be looking at when we get there, we're going to be looking at something that's really just going to cover your cremation expenses and everything that goes with that, as well as leaving your grandkids some money, because you don't want to outlive that. You want that to be there for your grandkids whenever that time comes.
Exactly.
Now, does that make sense to you? Am I on the same page? Do you like the idea that I just presented to you? Why do you like that idea? Right? I need them to convince me that my idea for them makes sense. Right? Yes, that's a really great idea. I like that. Let's do that. Right? Not me convincing them.
Exactly.
Me sharing based on what they've shared with me because of the good questions I asked. Let's separate that need. And then, and only then, can we move forward to the next section once we've agreed? That's what I'm giving you quotes for.
Okay.
That's what happened when you were giving her those options. But don't forget about my 16-year-old, right? You never brought it up again.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Right.
So now you can have a much easier conversation in FCGS if that's the only thing you guys are focused on.
Okay.
Right? A little bit extra to leave money to the grandkids.
Right.
Right. And then we'll still listen to some of the FCGS part, but then planting some seeds, you can bring back up the need for the grandchild again when you talk about accidental. That's where you could have looped it back in.
Okay.
You know, because she was final expense, right? You know, she was.
Yeah.
You know, now that I think of it, you're really healthy. I mean, the chances of you passing away in the next 10 years from your health is probably pretty low. What do you think? Do you agree with that? You know, and if you were to pass away in the next 10 years, it might be due to an accident, right? So if you did pass away from an accident, look at all of this extra we could provide your granddaughter for college, and that never cancels.
Yeah. Okay. That is great.
You like the idea of that.
Yeah.
Right? So you might not even need to get a term policy unless you're afraid you would pass away from your health over the next 10 years. But I might be able to save you some money if we do it this way. And now I have solved all of her problems.
Okay.
Not just put her in a final expense bubble.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So now let's listen to FCGS. Do you have any questions?
No, that was amazing. It was just too much. It completely, again, it was just another aha moment. I know you called this, but yeah, it was just, it was too much. So splitting that is exactly what I needed to do, because it was just, it's not satisfying when we came to the end of just that. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it wasn't enough with what I was offering, and I did. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense.
So
yeah.
We'll just talk about the end really quick, and we're still going to listen to some more of the call. So basically at the end, you'll hear it when we listen to it, where she did not sound super convinced that the 20,000 was it. She went ahead and started filling out the application. And then when you got to the banking information, I can't find it, right? I have to go to my appointment. You guys were on the phone for another 15 minutes before she finally had to go, right? But I think she really was still processing.
Yeah. Because truthfully, the 20,000 wasn't enough for what she was wanting. So it really doesn't, when you look at it and dissect it like this, it doesn't make sense. So she probably was. The whole time she was probably thinking, 20,000 is just not enough. So it makes complete sense.
You cannot rely, right? Like you have to remember life insurance comes first, problem solving comes first, the history of our customer comes first. And only when you are on the same page with someone can then we say, okay, now that we know we're only talking about this portion of what you want, right?
Right.
Now let's talk about what we can do to maybe make that day a little bit easier, because that wasn't even like the most important thing for her, right? When you talk about how quickly we can get that money to her son, why would that matter for college education or leaving grandkids money? It doesn't.
Yeah. And I kind of knew that. Yeah. I was assuming that.
Yeah. And we also didn't know, anyway, let's keep listening. I'm talking too much.
And whole life is going to be pretty much the exact opposite of a term. This particular whole life is, because there's a lot of different whole life policies out there. There's some that are riskier than others. So I want to stay away from the riskier ones, because when you turn 80, they spike. The payment becomes unaffordable. So I don't want that either. I feel like that's just the same as it canceling like a term policy. So the whole life policy we'll be talking about today, once you're approved, payment can never go up. The coverage will always stay the same. And then this one can never cancel at any age. So when you do turn 80, it's not going to change at all once the approval's in the system. You're approved at age 55. And then as health changes, nothing can affect the policy. So the numbers that we talk about will never change, which is exactly what you want. So that's the policy types I put in place for families that are wanting exactly what you're wanting, because they're more permanent. And then I guess the characteristic of a whole life also is once it goes into effect, that first year, after the first year, it starts accumulating cash. And then you could borrow against it if needed in the future. So, okay, so that's what you're kind of looking for, correct? Just a safe whole life policy? Okay, excuse me. So that's what we'll be talking about from here on out, is just.
Okay, so there was your whole life explanation. What did you hear in there, or what do you think you could have done different?
So, I always, this right here is when I've been noticing for a while. This is when I just start talking a lot and don't let them answer me. So, question. So what would you say? You would say,
are you
like,
talking about a transition statement, or how you explain?
Not even necessarily transition. I need to have her, and this is with everybody. They just say, yes, that's what I want. Because again, I was the one that said, this is what you need. They're not telling me what I need to hear. Because again, I could say it doesn't matter. It needs to come from them. I'm having a hard I'm having a hard time with that. Because from here on out, it's just, it's like a lot of talking, especially so I'm talking way too much. I'm not letting them tell me what I'm telling them, which it might be the same. It might not be, like you said. So I have noticed right here, this is when it just goes downhill from me talking way too much. They don't barely say anything,
right?
Which is probably what my problem is.
Well, no, because this entire call had definitely lots of things we can talk about. But if you were to take away anything from this call, it would be what we've already heard.
Yeah.
Not what we're about to hear. Right? Okay. Because it's like, I don't want you walking into the blind at the end, because you have lost your focus on what's important to the customer and just heard certain key words that you grasped onto, and then failed to learn what has prevented them from making a decision, right? Really helping them start building that urgency of putting something in place, and then educating them on, these types of calls are very common.
Yeah.
They really are. It's It's like 50-50.
Yeah,
50%
I
of the
agree.
time we get someone that just wants burial insurance and nothing else.
Mhm.
And 50% of the time we get people that want burial insurance and like to leave something extra.
Completely
And
agree.
for all of the people that want to leave something extra, how much coverage are you hoping to be able to get if you could, right? And knowing what they've been quoted, what has stopped them from buying it, what do they think is too expensive, and really meeting them where they're at. You need them to get these aha moments in education before you then leave that section. So you have to tie in their story to education for it to be relevant and for them to get those aha moments. So for whole life, again, it's going to sound like the script because that's what I said, right?
Exactly.
Whole life is the exact opposite, right? The payments are a little higher, but it's not unaffordable or nobody would get it. You know, the payments never go up, coverage never goes down, it can never be canceled at any age. These are the types of policies people typically get to take care of their funeral costs and final expenses because it's permanent. It can never cancel. It's also something that I would include for your 6 grandkids because you don't want to outlive leaving them something behind, right? You want to be able to leave them something behind whenever you pass. Did I get that right?
Mhm.
Do you like the idea of that? Do you think a whole life policy for funeral costs and leaving your grandkids money is appropriate? And then a term policy for college education is appropriate,
Mhm.
right? Are we on agreement for that? That's probably the route we should go. Because we only sell whole life. So I'm only going to be able to help you with this part, although I know this piece is very important to you. And you used to do this, by the way,
Mhm.
because you would tell me people all the time.
Yeah.
You would send people to me all the time. This person
Yeah.
also wants this
Right.
amount of coverage, and you stop doing that.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But I
So
definitely would have done it if I would have thought. You're right. I
putting
just
that on
missed
the
it.
forefront, I will put you in touch with someone I trust to hold your hand to make sure we find the best policy for your daughter. Right. So that way they don't have to, at the end, feel like they have to shop around for something that puts it all in one, that you're going to be that trusted source for them because you have to put that to bed. You have to put it to rest.
Yeah.
So then you can loop it in, because if they become modified, you still have that.
Okay.
But if they're
Yeah.
final expense, you can come up with that second idea to put that coverage in the accidental. Those are the routes you have to go. So it's
Yeah.
more like the strategy needs to come back,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? First and foremost, that's
Yeah.
number one, is like the strategy is gone. The sales process is gone. That has to come back first. What we're about to listen to is secondary because it matters the least.
Right. No, that's exactly it. Yep.
Right?
I
Yes,
agree.
yes, you do a lot of talking coming up. And we're going to
Yeah.
listen to that and help you figure out how to do less of it just by turning some of your statements into questions.
Mm.
That's the easy part.
Yeah. Okay.
Asking the unstated questions so that you can go deep and learn more is the unscripted stuff, right? That determines good versus great.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
So if you're going to compartmentalize that, that's the first and foremost thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I'm going to hit play.
The safe whole life policy. And I will kind of talk about why people choose Lincoln Heritage. And I know there's a lot of companies out there, insurance companies, but because I know we're putting this in place again to take care of cremation and make sure the kids have some money left behind, there really is significant things that happen to the policies that will affect your son or who's left behind. So that's what I'll kind of shine some light on how we're a little bit different and how a little more supportive than others. So the first one is it takes, when I first started kind of looking, I didn't realize that a lot of insurance companies, it takes a while to get the money to your family when you do pass. On average, it's about 4 to 6 weeks for them to see the money. And that is because of the death certificate.
Okay, so let's just talk about this. So this whole next section, we're just going to focus on how to do less talking and more conversation.
Okay.
This isn't a lot of strategy stuff,
Right,
but
right.
it is how to get your customer to talk more
Mm-hmm.
and change this. Okay, so honestly, all you have to do is pull up your script,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And in our transition phase, now that we're on the same page, we know what our plan is going to be. And now that they know, we know, that's all we're going to talk about.
Right.
There are some differences that you need to understand when choosing who you're going to get your whole life policy with. Is it okay if I explain that to you? First, get permission. Yes.
Okay.
It's just a really good way to break it up by asking.
Yeah.
permission.
Agreed. Okay.
Right? Okay. Now, there's some filler talk in here
Mhm.
that I think you don't need. Just
Okay.
go right into the question. You know, the
Okay.
majority of life insurance companies, they typically take somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to pay out. Did you know that? Question.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a pause for a break.
Right.
You just said it, and then you continued and said, and that's because of the death certificate.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Majority of life insurance companies typically take 4 to 6 weeks to pay out. Did you know that? And do you have any idea why? Or, you could engage them that way. What does my script say?
When it comes to paying for your funeral, your family might not have that kind of time. So funeral homes typically need to get paid immediately before they could start, right?
Oh, so what piece of paper? Is that what it says?
It says, have you ever had to have a
Let me pull it up. I'll pull it up.
I have it right here. I don't have that.
I'll find it. Script. Okay. Let me scroll down.
Oh yeah, it's with the claims process. Yeah.
That's okay. Up. Here we go. Yeah, no, it's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was up in the top part. I don't know why.
Okay, yeah. So it says, now here's an objection that we actually take care of before they have a chance to give it to us. I know that some companies will say that they pay out within 24 to 48 hours. And if you don't say that, people will say at the end, well, my company said that they're going to pay out within 24 to 48 hours too. Right? Now, I know a lot of companies will say that they pay out within 24 to 48 hours, and she's been shopping for 3 months. So she's probably heard that. Right? But is it okay if I explain to you what that actually means? Question. Doesn't matter how big or small the question is, it breaks it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Now here's another question. What piece of paper will your family need from the funeral home or the state in order to even file the claim for the life insurance? The death certificate. Right. And do you have any idea how long it might take for them to receive it? Doesn't have to be in your state. I think you said something about your state. We'll hear it in a second.
Yeah, I always do.
Right? Yeah. So if it takes, let's just say they say 2 weeks. Exactly. So if it takes 2 weeks to even file the claim, then the life insurance company has to receive it, review it, process it, approve it. And after all that has been completed, then yes, it's paid out within 24 to 48 hours. So at the earliest, you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks. Does that make sense? Right? Mm-hmm. Do you think your son would have 3 to 4 weeks to wait to get paid if he had to come out of pocket and pay for the funeral? Mm-hmm. Would it help if we could get him paid sooner? Mm-hmm. Right? Well, let me tell you how we do it. So let's hear how you said it.
And I don't know in Illinois, do you know how long it takes to kind of get a death certificate?
Sure, I just moved up here like 3 years ago. So
okay.
I have no clue.
Yeah. I would just say on average, what I'm hearing and kind of seeing today is it's about a week. So it doesn't take too long, but again, they would have to get the death certificate and then send it into the insurance company. And then that's why it takes a little while. So what we do it a little bit different. What we do is
so here's the thing here is you're coming up with the problem. You're telling them what the problem is, but you don't know if they think it's a problem. Mm-hmm. With the check-in question here.
Right.
So yes,
right.
It's a problem, but did they care about it? Is it a problem for them? Because if you're going to solve a problem that they don't care about, then what type of impact does that solution have?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to check in, right? You're missing some check-in moments. So
Yeah,
you present
definitely.
information, and then you ask them how they feel about the information. So if
Okay.
your son had to wait 3 to 4 weeks to get paid,
Mhm.
would that be difficult for him? Right?
Right, right.
Or even keeping them engaged in the explanation of what you were saying instead of
Mm-hmm.
just giving them the answers
Mhm.
helps keep them tuned in, because you're
Yeah,
asking questions throughout, right?
exactly.
Rather than just saying, but companies take 4 to 6 weeks to pay out, because a lot of times, they need the death certificate, and it usually takes like a week or two to get it. And then after that, then it pays out right away. And, and just telling them what the problem is and then going right into the solution, it doesn't mean as much unless they feel the impact of that.
Exactly. Okay.
Right? So what you're doing here is you're going right into the solution now.
Mhm.
No breaks or pause or check-ins or questions or nothing. Right?
Yeah. And I have, like I said, I've felt this for a while now. Is just, I don't, that's exactly what you said. Okay.
Have a nonprofit that we work with, and what they do is they take the risk up front for our families. So they'll have whatever amount you end up choosing with your face value. It's going to be in your beneficiary. So it'll be in Ryan's account 24 to 48 hours before the death certificate. So yeah, it's a nice little feature.
Okay. Now, when you hear something like that, that is an opportunity for you to understand more. You just said, ooh, what about that had you feeling excited about that?
Mhm.
Right? That was a little clue, like a
Yeah.
little tiny little gift that she
Right.
gave to you, where you could have challenged her to expand on that. Right? You said, ooh, what, can you tell me what you meant by that?
Okay.
Like, what did you
I
hear
like that
that
a lot.
caused you, right?
Yeah,
Get them to talk. That's how you stop talking.
exactly.
Right? You don't even have to ask a question to prompt them to talk. If you hear engagement, like
Mhm.
that's a big opportunity to go after it.
Okay. Yep. Agree.
We do need the death certificate, but once we get it, that's when Lincoln Heritage pays back our nonprofit. So I always tell people the only reason we can do that faster than other insurance companies is because of our nonprofit that we work with. They're pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He might have money to kind of pay up front and do that, but we just don't even want to put him in that position anyways.
How could you have done that part different? Instead of just making an assumption, how could you have rephrased that in the form of a question?
Well, I honestly, I think she would have told me what she was going to say when you said, oh, ooh,
But let's pretend that she didn't
she
get
didn't even do that.
I mean,
See, I don't know. This part gets me. I don't know how to.
So you just said here, I'll just say what you just said. You
Okay.
just said, now your son might have the money to come out of pocket and pay for it, but we don't want him to have to.
Mhm.
Okay. Rewind. Now, would your son have the money to come out of pocket and pay for it if
Okay.
he had to? Would you rather him not have to? Or if she says no, it would be, oh, okay. So do you see the value then in a company advancing money when he needs it the most? Tell me more about what that would do for him.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So it's just truly just tweaking it to where you're asking the question instead of stating it.
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
I said it. I don't know why I have such a hard time with that.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
It's really actually annoying because I know I'm doing it. I need to just change it. It's so simple. Yeah.
And it's something that I'm doing with you right now. If you go back and listen to this, you'll notice that I hesitate to just give you the answers. I'm asking you, what did you hear? What do you think you could have done differently? And just being in the habit of asking questions to be curious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Going in with that curious,
Exactly.
or that curiosity is what you're missing here.
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
There's no
I agree.
curiosity to how your customer feels about anything. It's more
Right.
how you feel about it, and you're assuming she feels the same way.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yep.
Okay, let's continue.
I agree.
We know that day's hard, so we're just trying to make it as easy as we can for him. So that's one thing that we do a little different. I'll kind of talk about that nonprofit. We work hand in hand with them. They're called the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. Very unique, kind of a special division of Lincoln Heritage. And just to give a brief background on why they created this nonprofit, they were in this industry for a very long time, for generations. And I feel like because of that, they have a lot of knowledge that they can give our families. And what they kind of did was they started seeing back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of corruption starting because the big corporations were coming in and buying these little family-run funeral homes. What they started seeing was the prices became just too expensive and families weren't taken care of. So that's why they started this, and they kind of stepped away from that world and really teamed up with us. And we're just trying to get things back to what they should be, people paying appropriate prices and then ultimately just being taken care of. So that's what's nice, is whoever we list as beneficiaries, so definitely your son.
Okay. So let's just pretend you didn't change anything with how you explained that, which there's definitely room for some refinement. But even if you didn't change anything, how could you have ended that statement better?
So I think it's just rephrasing it to a question on like, how do you feel this would benefit your son?
Yeah.
Right. It's
So
just rephrasing the question to asking her how she feels instead of me telling her how she's gonna feel or how it's beneficial.
Right. So here you were like, you're kind of transitioning with how you feel about it, or like summarizing it with, so that's what we do, right? As like a summary to transition to the next thing you want to say. And instead of saying something like, so that's what we do, and I know you didn't say that verbatim, it's check in.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that if your son had an advocacy program to help him, make sure he's not getting overcharged or taken advantage of for the cost of your cremation, do you think that would help him? Do you think that would give you peace of mind? What are your thoughts on what I just said? Right? It's also an opportunity to see if they even heard what you said.
Yeah.
Because if they can't even like tell you why they like it,
Right.
maybe they weren't even listening.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's also a good tool for you to make sure that they're on the same page, as well as my whole goal in these sales calls is I need to get, just like we did in education, I need to get these customers to sell me on the idea of why they like it. So I'm convinced. I don't need to convince them. I need to present them the information and let them convince me why they think it's a good fit for them. Right.
Yeah.
And when they don't do any talking, it's like impossible.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that section real quick. And I think that the refinement part can just be buttoned up a little bit, so you don't feel like you're kind of rambling about the nonprofit, right? So we talked about the first thing. Now the second thing we do, and I don't think it's a bad thing to introduce the name of it earlier, the Funeral Consumer Guardian Society. So that way you're not introducing it later. So the second thing that the Guardian Society will do is make sure that your son is not overcharged or taken advantage of for the cost of your cremation. Now, you mentioned earlier that you had to pay, wait, has she said that yet about her paying for her husband? She did, right? With the death certificate. Yes.
He did. Yeah. I said I have it in my notes. I don't know exactly.
That you, I know, I'm sorry for your loss. You mentioned earlier that you had to pay for your husband's cremation. Back then, what was that experience like?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And just kind of sit there for a second, let her talk about it. And then changing the script a little bit is you all you said was that they've been in the industry for a while. I think it would be beneficial to say it was actually founded by ex-funeral directors.
Okay.
Right? who saw firsthand how corrupt and unregulated the funeral industry had become.
Yeah, that does sound a little bit more. Yeah.
It's it's a little more direct. They saw that as funeral homes were being bought up by large corporations, they were now charging 500, 600% markup to grieving families because they could.
Right.
They partnered with Lincoln Heritage to be an advocate for all of our families to make sure that when that time comes, right, we can help him make sure that he's getting a fair price, that he's not saying yes to the first person he talks to, especially since you just moved here a couple of years ago, right? And then you go in here and start asking these questions. So when you walked into the funeral home when your husband passed, you know, I don't know if this happened to you or not, but usually one of the first things they ask people is, how do you plan on paying? And did your husband have life insurance? Now, did your husband have a life insurance policy? Right? Like, make it relevant to her story so it doesn't sound scripted.
Right, exactly.
Right? Did your husband have a life insurance? Now, why do you think they would want to know if he had a life insurance policy? And if that's not relevant, why do you think they would want to know from your son if you had a life insurance policy?
Right.
Right? Because they want their money. Yes, but also so they know how much they can charge. Right?
Yeah.
And how long it takes for insurance companies to pay out.
Yeah.
So all this money you have now for your funeral, for your grandkids, for college, they're going to try to get that policy to be assigned over to them. And now, instead of, you know, a $1,500 cremation, and that policy's in their control, how much do you think it might cost now? Right? So creating a problem, like a real problem, that because our solution is only as strong as the problem itself.
Right.
Okay. And yeah, and then I want her to say they're going to charge more. Exactly. So how does that make you feel, knowing that the money that you have for your daughter and your grandkids might get taken up by some funeral director?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I'm engaging her the whole time. Now I come in with the solution because I've created the problem first.
Okay. Yeah.
Had her engage with me with the problem. Now, instead of your family having to go through all that, the Guardian Society will contact the funeral home, let them know you had a life insurance policy, but guess what they won't tell them? Question: how much it's worth? Exactly. Right? They'll even price shop 3 to 4 other funeral homes in the area to see if we can get a better price. Check in. What do you think about that?
Right. Okay.
Right? If your son had the ability to not do anything and just let us take over and do the legwork for him, what type of relief do you think that would have on him? Right? And you know that we're going to do everything we can to not touch that extra money that you want to have, bringing what's important to her for your grandkids.
Right. Right.
To the forefront, right? Because that's what's important to her.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's keep listening.
He's going to be supported by us. So that's what I know I kind of talked about a plan, and you were saying organization is something that is important. So I'll kind of explain how we could help with that. So the first thing is, when you get your policy in the mail, you're going to get something called a final wishes guide. And that guide, you're going to also get ID cards. And those ID cards are going to be very specific to you. They're going to have your policy number on it, as well as like a 24-hour phone number that he's going to call on the day that you pass. So I know you're still young, and but I'm going to kind of show you how this is going to work so that you could kind of see it in motion on that day. Okay. So let's say years and years and years down the line, when you do pass, your family's going to be around. And what's going to happen is Ryan, he's going to pull that card out of his wallet and he's going to call it. When he does, he's going to get connected to the Guardian Society. And what they're going to do is they're going to pull up your policy and they're going to go over all the details with him. Anything else that you put in your final wishes guide, we're going to go over that as well. So I would say, kind of going back to our conversation, you want a viewing a cremation, anything that you want to put in there, I would say put in there because we're going to go over. So some kind of neat things I've seen is people have put like their favorite flowers, music, memories, because I've seen families take that and use it for the ceremony, which I thought was kind of neat. So again, any information that you have, put in there, because we just kind of go over that with them and it makes it a little bit special. So the other thing that we do right when he calls is we start kind of working behind the scenes immediately. And what I mean by that is cremation and viewing. The viewing, wherever, excuse me, wherever you're kind of thinking you want the viewing to kind of take place, we're going to be helping. So what we do is we call about 3 to 4 different crematories, where what we have noticed is crematories could be very close to each other, but very differently priced. And I know you said you just kind of moved, but have you heard anything lately on how much cremation costs in your area?
No, but I got my husband cremated in 21, and it was like $1,800.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So on average, excuse me, yeah, it's about 1,500, but there's some that we've seen that are close to like 5,000. And like I said, it's just different, kind of whoever you call. So that's what we do. We want to make sure that the kind of quotes I've been seeing, like on average, if you take an average of my clients, they're paying about $600 to $900 for cremation today, for today's price, of course. So again, what we're doing is we're just making sure the prices are appropriate, and we don't want the expensive one. So what we do is we present that to him. We're going to say, okay, these are the 3 to 4 different crematories in the area, and this is the prices we got it down to. Now, as far as the viewing, a lot of families, when we do see that, a lot of families, what they do is they go to the funeral home, and a lot of I've noticed, they don't tell them that they could rent a casket, have a nice service, and then ultimately get cremated. A lot of families, for some reason, they end up buying the casket, and we don't want that. Caskets are expensive, so what we would do, or at least kind of just advise Ryan, is you can rent them, and then they're significantly cheaper. So again, this whole life policy, what we want is we want to save as much as we can, so that there is money left behind for your daughter and then your grandkids too. So we're going to be trying to really save as much as we can for that. And
check in, right? Right?
Yeah,
like,
because it's a lot of talking.
Yourself now, like there were so many
Yeah.
moments in there where you could have paused,
Oh, absolutely.
check in and ask her, do you like the idea of that?
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that? Have some discussion before you move on. But also, I think it's totally unnecessary how specific you're getting with all the details, right? I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Like we don't rent a casket versus buy a casket. Like, I don't think that's necessary. I think you're kind of getting into the nitty gritty and getting away from like the emotion of it all and into sort of like the logic. And that's all that's doing is giving her ideas of what they could do without the FCGS.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It felt like I was rambling.
You're not the FCGS,
Yeah.
So it has to be more high level, right? With just the assistance and price shopping and negotiating and just saving the money in general. I would not go into like all the details that you're going through. I think it's too much, and it's creating a longer conversation and talking on your end.
Okay.
The reason we do pay so quickly is we don't want him to assign that policy over to a funeral home either. We want to keep the control and the pricing in his control and not theirs, because it just sometimes they tend to take the whole thing. So we don't want that. It's just not necessary. So that's kind of how we work. If he needs help with starting the death certificate, really wherever you do pass, if he needs to get transportation started from there to whatever crematory or funeral home you choose, we're there every step of the way. If he needs flowers, the place for the ceremony, anything like that, he has somebody that he's working with that we can get those prices down and just just help on that day, because I know that day is kind of hard. So that comes with every policy. That is something that doesn't cost anything. It's just there. We're there for our families. So let me pull up an application, see what you fall into.
Okay. Not even any checking in at the end, right?
No, yeah.
But okay, so here's some good things, right? Like, and I shared with the team this morning, which is you have a lot of empathy in your voice and tone, and people like you. Your people are like magnetized to you because you sound trusting and engaging, and you sound like you really care about them and that you love what you do. But that only goes so far, right? Where the whole strategy of it all has completely disappeared.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Which is why, in my opinion, we're starting to see a little bit of a dip. And all of a sudden people can't find their banking information.
Exactly. I said it's all making sense. And I knew there was a reason. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And it's just because you're not really helping them solve their problems.
Right.
You're not identifying what the real problems are.
Right.
Not really getting the full history of where they've been and what's prevented them from making a decision. Kind of tying that all together with education and educating them properly based on their specific needs and wants, making sure you're on the same page. And then just the FCGS portion, buttoning that up to just be a little bit more concise, asking more questions and checking in to make sure they even like what you just said. Because even at the end here, okay, let's move on to health questions, right? Instead of, I've been doing a lot of talking. Do you even like everything I've been telling you today? Do you think this would even help your kids if they had something like this, right? I know nothing about how she feels about it, right? And then you kind of did an interesting thing where you inserted the hospital story like at the beginning instead of here, right? I'm really glad you feel that way, right? Because the bottom line is your job isn't even going to begin until you pass away, right?
Yeah.
Let's pretend it's 30 years from now. You're young.
Yeah.
In the hospital with your kids. Things aren't looking good. They know it's coming, but it doesn't matter. It's never easy. That nurse is going to walk in at 2 a.m, tap your daughter or your son on the shoulder, let them know that their mom has just passed. Right? Of course, she's going to offer her condolences, but the very next thing she's going to say is, you need to make arrangements for her body now because we have to get the room ready for the next patient. And in that moment, this is not on the script, this is what I say. And in that moment, when your kids realize they can never visit you anymore, they can't touch you anymore, they can't share stories with you anymore, they can't be in the same room with you anymore, and that finality is gone, right? It's sunk in. Even when they know, that wave of emotion that comes over people when they know they are never going to be able to physically be with you on this earth, are they in the right state of mind to talk to a funeral home now and start making arrangements?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So all they're going to have to do is pull out their ID card, make one phone call to us, and we're going to be there to take care of everything for them. That's when you need your aha moment from them. Right? That's when that story.
Yeah.
It's like we're like an audiobook. We have to get them to picture it in their minds, and we have to slow down. We have to be descriptive.
Right.
We have to tie it all together for them. They have to let out a sigh of relief, but only after everything has been done properly before that.
Right.
Right? Because now you go into the health questions, you're going to make recommendations that are on point, spot on.
Yeah.
What they're looking for. There's nothing else to think about because I've covered everything.
Yeah.
Right? So now when we get to the end here and we talk about the accidental death and we talk about how she's final expense.
Do you want him to be another private?
I can just say what happened.
Yeah.
Talk about we find out she's final expense, which is same day coverage. And I would have offered her 8 units of accidental.
Right.
Right.
She's 54.
Well, and also because of the college fund
Yeah, yeah,
for her daughter.
right.
And then it's specifically tied that back in.
Yeah,
You know,
that's good.
no,
Yeah.
you're healthy. What do you think
Yeah.
the chances of, in a question, what do you think the chances of you passing away in the next 10 years are of your health? Now, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but if you had to choose between an accident or your health in the next 10 years, what do you think it might be?
Right.
Right? If the answer is accident, you know, I know I said earlier that I would help you find a term policy for your daughter's college, but
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting you to be so healthy. And our policy comes with up to $160,000 worth of accidental death coverage. I mean, a regular accident would just be 40,000. Car accident, 80,000.
Yeah.
And that never cancels. Right? So maybe it makes more sense to use the accidental portion of our policy to go towards just in case you pass away from an accident in the next 10 years. And then if you don't, it's still there. It never cancels.
Yeah.
Do
No,
you
that's good.
get the idea of that?
Yeah.
Check in,
Yeah.
right? Maybe we should just put everything in one.
Mhm.
I love that idea, right? Now I'm getting rid of it altogether.
Right.
So
No,
now
that's good.
applications have solved all of the problems, right? And when I hear any hesitation of I can't find banking information,
Mhm.
no problem, just take out your debit card and we'll do the application with that, just to call the bluff, right? I think you need to call the bluff more so that
I've
you can
stopped
identify
that.
that.
Yep.
Now you don't know if it's
I
a real
know.
objection or if it's really a
Right.
banking objection. Because if you would have called her bluff,
Right.
oh, no problem. That's the easy part. Just take out your debit card. We'll finish the application. And then after your doctor appointment, we'll just update it with the routing and the account number. If you would have gotten another objection there, then you would have known that it's not the banking.
And honestly, it's funny that you say that this part. I completely stopped doing that these last couple weeks. That's probably why there's been adjustments too. Only reason is because I haven't been able to get a hold of them and it's been taking a lot of time. So I figured I would just be like, not do that at all. And then if they don't, but I didn't think of it as tying it into their bluff and at least getting it that she could have possibly been like on the books now and been able to change. Because I haven't changed again. I changed some of them, but I stopped that recently, like completely, because I didn't want to do any credit cards, period.
Right. But it also helps you
That makes sense.
understand if it's a real objection or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And then you can decide to sign the DocuSign or not. You can decide you are in control.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't get it and then they ghost you, it's no different than if you get it and you decide to cancel it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. But now you know if it was a you problem
Right. Right.
or not without having to say, I keep getting all these banking objections. Right.
Right. Yeah. No,
So-
I like that. Yeah, like exactly.
And that's what happened, right? So she kind of chose the 20,000. We don't have time to listen to the rest of it because I have Kathleen sitting in the waiting room. But I really hope that that gave you some clarity and that you're going to take what we talked about into your calls for the rest of the day, you know, moving forward. And that was my whole goal. And I'm so glad we got this opportunity to speak today.
So glad. So I appreciate it, Dana. Thanks.
Okay. All right. We'll get back out.